Agents Podcast.
We are continuing down the same path that I have been on lately with several guests, which is what I would consider the lowest hanging fruit, or what you think is the lowest hanging fruit in terms of bottom of funnel leads that can be generated from social media. And that is via YouTube. And that is why I'm bringing on our guest today, who owns a media company. Say it again, Andrew. What is the name of the media company? I don't want to mess it up.
A Impact Media.
A Impact Media, which we have the founder of the media company, which is Andrew Bayon. This dude has not only reviewed and analyzed tens of thousands of YouTube videos, he works with many of you in the real estate industry to create business, and he understands YouTube as well as anybody that I know. And I brought him on today because I want him to share some of this knowledge with all of you. So, Andrew, welcome, first of all, to the Lab Code Agents podcast. Let's start with maybe just a little bit about you. What kind of led you into this career, I guess, and then specifically on down the YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. What kind of led me down into this career is, as an 18-year-old kid, I started selling Cutco knives, which for anyone who's not familiar, it's not door to door, it's referral based. And the goal at each appointment is to get referrals, and then you have to basically cold warm call. So I was making sometimes 100 to 200 calls a day. And so I come from that sales background, like following up, like keeping up with people and always be closing. This was Grant Cardone was getting big, and I always kind of hated it. I always really hated making phone calls, even though it's something I know I need to do. So I did it anyways. So around like 2014, this was like 4 to 5 years after Cutco, that I was in it for a little bit of time. I got into marketing, and I kind of saw this other path where like you can't let go of sales. Like you still need the skills of sales, but marketing at a high level does everything that you want sales to do. But instead of like pushing someone to like, hey, like close, etc., you can earn the trust and earn their business before you even speak to them. And that's, I kind of got a little bit into YouTube, Quora, social media platforms, all that on 2014. And we could talk about that, but we can move on to like more so YouTube. But that's kind of what led me down this path, was just, and then obviously Gary V like content back in 2014. So that's where I got started in all of this.
I love it. I love it. And so, obviously, if you were a disciple of Gary Vee, that's, all things social media. What led you to what your career is? I mean, what were you, like what led you into creating a media company in the first place?
So I was in the fitness space and built an email list, got several million views on Quora, got inbound leads from that, was building an email list, got clients. I realized I didn't really want to be a fitness coach forever. A friend came to me saying, hey, I work for this spec home builder here in Tampa. It's just me and him, and then kind of like a bookkeeper. There's no one does marketing and sales. And I kind of dove all in 2017 with them. And I kind of got consumed in the real estate space. I learned from all of these new construction people, like Jeff Shore and other people, and kind of learned everything about new construction. And I realized very shortly and quickly that I could try to find the end buyer, which was still the goal, and I could market to real estate agents consistently to stay in front of them to say, hey, we have houses, these, because we were selling spec homes, so very few. It's very hard to find like a very finite buyer for those. So I was like, I can market to affiliates in the digital marketing world, which are realtors, people who will kind of go on the behalf of us, and basically built their brand. They had no digital presence, not really much. they end up doubling in sales. But throughout that time, I had realtors coming to me saying, "Hey, can we grab coffee? Can we grab lunch? Can we do this?" I thought they wanted to learn about the builder, and really they just cared about like, tell me about Facebook ads, because I was sending email newsletters to them every single week just about everything that I was learning about marketing. So there was kind of like a diverging path, and I kind of saw where I wanted to go, which was more marketing. And I saw all these realtors reaching out to me, and then there was an opportunity that kind of landed on my feet too. And I end up being kind of like the in-house marketing person for several like top real estate teams. And I kind of saw the inner workings. Now everything started to come together, like the real estate background with the builder, the marketing, my sales background. And that's where all the pieces started to come together for me.
Awesome. So at what point did you just say, did you leave those brokerages and just say, I'm going to go create my own media company?
So I say in-house, like I saw myself as like on the team. They saw me as on the team. They kind of knew I was working with several at a time. So I was kind of like a glorified freelancer back in like 2018. Um, and that's where I started to kind of, because now I spent several million in ads, and that's what everyone wanted back then. And I kind of saw the amount of work that goes into like converting a lead, 1% conversion, like you have to follow up. And then as a business owner, like you can't be the person that follows up for everything, or you have to hire an ISA person. And most real estate agents, I shouldn't say most, a lot of real estate agents love the referrals path more, especially mortgage, all that. There's not as many that love that ISA kind of path of building that type of business. And I was like, well, why are we spending all this money on ads if you don't even really want to work with these people and follow up? There has to be a better way. And I was like, well, I created content, and I just kind of got all of them to be like, hey, let's get on video, let's create content, let's do this. And that's how organically we were able to like start to build their brand, start to bring in clients, and more enjoyable slash in line with kind of what they wanted to build their business around.
Hmm. So what did it look like? So, your first client, and you're going down this path of ads, Facebook ads, and then you shift. What did that look like?
So we were like, basically I was doing all things like setting up email campaigns, setting up ads for listings, running like lead generation campaigns for buyers and sellers, like the home value, the buyer, like I was trying everything. Like I've kind of done the gamut of like lead forms on Facebook. Okay, that didn't bring in high quality. So let's go like type form and build out like a landing page and have them opt in there, bring in a little higher quality, but still high volume, lower quality. And it was like, I kept trying all these things, kept testing all these things, and it kind of kept to the same answer. And then on their behalf, I even did this with the builder for a long time back then. I would take photos of like them, the houses, whatever. And because I couldn't get them to create content all the time, I would just literally write captions. I would like educate information. Back in the day where when photos were cool on Instagram, I would just write informational captions, telling stories of a buyer closing, seller closing. And that was like really how I was able to just churn out content without having them to create content all the time. And it was good for a time being, but it still kind of lacked a little bit of the personalization, like the trust that you get with video. So eventually, as I was able to like show them more of like, okay, this is the video, these are good videos, this is why. Like, have you ever heard the book They Ask You Answer?
Yeah.
So there's this guy named Marcus Sheridan, and he ran a company called River Pools and Spa. And he found that during the recession, I think he was dipping and he saw that HubSpot was writing blogs all about CRMs and stuff. And he was like, if I just answer questions that clients have on a blog, then they'll find me and I'll rank and I'll get business. And he ended up like really scaling his business, end up helping more people do that. And he was like, well, video and YouTube are the same thing as a blog, but just at a way higher level. So I kind of read like the books like that. I would give that to the client, and like it just kind of clicked. People started to see like, yeah, if I just get people to know me before they really know me, then there'll be some form of trust that's built.
I love it. I love it. So so what's next? Keep the story going. Like what does that look like? Because I think that's the hardest part for you know, I want to go deep here because at the same token, I don't want to frame this as though a real estate agent doesn't know what to do on YouTube. I think they don't know how to get started. But I do think also, and knowing you, that you have a strategy, like you have the playbook. And so but I'm curious in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
what did that look like? And what did you learn kind of as you went along that ended up narrowing down how you executed?
Yeah. So we kind of started off trying all different things. Like everyone talks about like you got to be the digital, like Gary Vee, I should say, talks about being the digital mayor, doing this. And then I saw like the they ask you answer. And so I was seeing kind of all of these different ways to like create content, and I kind of dipped the toe in each one. They ask you answer would be essentially doing something like the buyers, what happens after we go under contract? You create a video saying, oh, so you just went under contract. This is what happens next. Or like, this is the buying or selling process. And that content's good. It's great for your website. It's great for like internal use, like for emails, great for like sharing to people who are in the process. But there's only like 9% of people who are actually transacting at a time, and then you make that pool even smaller. How many of those people actually really care about learning about the buying and selling process? It's such a small segment that's like when you're fishing out of such a small pond, you have to go upstream. And that's what HubSpot was really good at, was they didn't just create content around CRMs, they created content around sales, around marketing. They went a little more upstream. And that's where Gary Vee kind of landed. So here you have one extreme that's kind of telling you like go very sales, like mechanical content, like transactional content. And then there's the other one of like just be the digital mayor, be the person. And that works. It's just it's a lot harder to create like a through line and a thread to like you interviewing the restaurant owner, you doing this. Like it takes a lot more to create that thread to real estate. So I kind of saw these two extremes and I was like, okay, there has to be somewhere a little more in the middle. And it ended up becoming like that typical, like that you kind of see where it all started, I should say, is the typical YouTube, like moving to, living in, like all this relocation, like what you need to know about neighborhoods, what you need to know about the area. And kind of the same thing dominoed in my head is like, okay, great. Like this is good for relocation, but what about people in your market? What about like sellers? What about like, so the relocation content's good in certain markets like Florida, Arizona, but when you want to reach people who are actually in your market, then you have to become the neighborhood expert. You have to talk about things that are going on locally, which is more like what I call like coming soon content. Ken Pozek kind of took this and like built a whole brand basically on this, which is just kind of talking about projects, developments, things to do, local news, all about like real estate and commercial, like projects and news that you would see in like your local business journal. And that's how you can target people like locally. And then I saw that there's ways to like talk about new construction. New construction dips in every single kind of pool. You got relocation buyers, you have first time home buyers, you have people who are retiring, they want new construction. And you kind of start to see it's like the path that you want to go down with content. All you have to do is try to see like where is the connection to kind of that end like client that you want and create content around that for them. So like Brad McCallum that you're familiar with and a lot of other people are familiar with, but some aren't. He's in Calgary and he creates really high production listing videos. He learned it basically all on his own. And he was like, there's no one really in my market that like if I look at a listing and I say, why am I paying this person 3% on $1 million house, $30,000? Like, what are they going to do with that $30,000? How are they going to invest it? And for him, that value came in creating this high end video. And he did that. And he did it for long enough, got really good at it. And now there's sellers that literally go to him on listing appointments and say, this is how we want our listing video to be. So like he goes on a listing appointment and they're telling him how they want their video to be before they even signed a piece of paper. That's something that everybody kind of wishes that they have. So I know I kind of ranted a little bit.
Yeah.
There's kind of a lot of paths when it comes to content, but that's kind of how I start to think about it in like a nutshell.
Yeah. So, here's my take on YouTube. And to me, it is the most bottom of funnel. In other words, and I think you articulate this differently. It is more likely to drive an actual lead that's going to convert, whereas the other platforms, which typically are short form, which typically are more digital mayor type content, because that's why people are there. They're there for entertainment, right? They're not there to be spammed to, is going to be more top middle of funnel. It doesn't mean they're not leads, but you're going to have a an intentional, effective, staying top of mind follow-up strategy, because as you said, the thread doesn't always lead back to real estate. So you got to lead it to real estate. So some people can do a really effective job of becoming a digital mayor without actually converting business. And that's probably what's lacking. There's no thread, right? And whereas YouTube, when you're creating the coming soon and the moving to and that's living in, it's very direct. It's very specific. However, to me, somebody who practices on social media, YouTube is the hardest platform to execute on. It's long form, and which means, it requires more time. It requires more time to edit. It requires an expertise in keywords and descriptions. It's a platform that is heavily used, and people like the Brad McCallums and the Ken Pozeks, and there's many others that are crushing at it. So I feel like it's also a little scary versus these other platforms where you can use them more as a CRM, as top of mind awareness with your sphere of influence, your past customers, your referral partners. Whereas YouTube, it's more of you're speaking to the abyss. And so how do you penetrate? What do you have to say for that? Because I know what people are saying. I need to get into that. It's bottom of funnel. I need leads. I got to close deals. But it's not that easy. What's your take on it?
So there's probably a lot of threads you can go down. First, just to kind of caveat, like there's no platform that's easy. Like if you look at the amount of competition that's on Instagram and TikTok, like you're competing against the best of the best. Like people who have been doing this forever, and I'm not talking real estate. Like you're competing for views against people like it's their job just to create content. And and then you add in the fact that like Instagram sends your content to just 100 random people. Obviously, there's an algorithm behind it, 1,000 people. Like you're not going to necessarily reach someone locally unless you get 10,000, 100,000, like a lot of views for someone to like reach. So there's that kind of thought process around it. And then the other thing is when it comes to YouTube, learning it Instagram is just as hard to learn how to be like that concise and that good with words and with content for it to actually perform. So no matter which platform you pick, you're going to have to become a consumer on it. You're going to have to learn it. You're going to have to like practice it. It's like going to the gym. It's like going to play a sport or an instrument. Like you're never good at the beginning. You always have to get a little bit better with each one. Just the side benefit of YouTube is you create a video once, it's there forever. And then if you want to take the other side of that equation, people are like, well, if I look bad, then people are going to see me forever. Well, if the video doesn't do well, no one's going to see it. So, like, you don't really have to worry. Like, most people recreate content every year, every couple of years, because they just get better. So, there's that. And the other thing, probably to like answer the like, how do you get started? How do you get over the hurdle of its long form content? Is you just kind of take it piece by piece. You can't get better at every single thing. So, like, when it comes to YouTube, you have ideas, you have thumbnails, you have titles, you have the script, then you have editing, and then you have posting, then you have everything after posting. So, with each video, kind of go through and then figure out like, okay, what can I do in this next video to make the script just a little bit better, like 1%? What can I do on the editing side to make this 1% better? What can I with a thumbnail? Instead of like me just in my house shooting a thumbnail photo, can I go into the community and take that same thumbnail photo? Or instead of going into the community, let me take the photo in my house and then let me use like Chat GPT's Dolly to get the AI background. And that's going to get like a higher click-through rate because it's going to look more attractive. So I see it as like going to the gym. Like you just have to go to the gym. You have to put in the reps. You have to go 3 to 5 times a week. You have to do it for 6 to 12 months. You have to keep track of certain things, get a little bit better each time. And when you add all that in and when you remove the like gym or YouTube, like that is the most translatable skill for anything in the world. Like when you learn how to lose weight, you technically learn a skill that can be translated to almost anything, like sales, business. It's all the same thing. It's all about, can you be consistent? Can you keep showing up? Can you keep getting better? And then can you do it for a long enough time for the numbers to actually play out?
Yeah. Discipline.
That's the hardest thing for all of us.
Yeah, man. Okay, so let's digress or maybe go forward here and talk about, if let's just say I'm a real estate agent and I reach out to you and say, hey man, like I gotta do YouTube. And I haven't really done, a ton on social. I'm just, I'm a novice at it. I create some things here and there and very inconsistent, but I'm realizing now is the time. Where do I start?
So, Jeff, where do you get most of your business? Do you get it in your local city or the Ozarks? Like, where do you want to play this out as an example?
Let's call me as a referral based real estate agent. I've not had any I'm not like a lead guy. I've dabbled in a lot of different things. I had my face on a billboard for a minute. I've done some farming of neighborhoods, but I've never really stuck with anything long term. It's pretty much referral based from my friends and family and church and those sorts of things.
So, do you like to be in front of the camera, behind the camera? Do you want to be the face? Do you want other people to be the face?
I
Which one
mean, does anybody really want to be in front of the camera?
No.
But I realize the importance of being in front of the camera. I think I need to be, so I'm willing to be.
Okay. So now just kind of tie back to like a purposeful reason. Like, for example, for me, I kind of tie it back to like my grandfather. My grandfather was this businessman who worked at Kodak, and he like went up throughout the ranks, did the whole corporate ladder, and he acquired all of these skills, all these knowledge. And what I've kind of in this, I don't want to kind of take it too far down this path, but um, basically, when he got cancer, uh, he was kind of always that like person who would be like talking about different stories. He would tell you about this time or this book he was reading or whatever, and he's just kind of sharing information. And what I kind of realized really quickly is like that's all we're kind of doing with YouTube is we're just sharing information to like from a one to one to a one to many. So you have to realize that like this is one of the most like scalable things you can do, one of the highest leverage money making activities for most people when they're doing YouTube at a high level. The average video that they do not record and do not post, if they're posting once a week and 52 videos a year, the numbers end up costing them $2,000 to $12,000 in business. So they lose on average sometimes $6,000 just because they won't hit record and post the video. Like once you're consistent, obviously, like that's kind of how the numbers start to play out. So going down the strategy, like you let's kind of keep it a little specific just for the story's sake. Like what city do you want to sell in?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. And in that area, if you looked at the where a lot of your business comes from, where would that be? And talk to me about kind of just the general demographics of that person.
Actually, let's switch to Lake of the Ozarks.
Okay.
It's unique. So same question, like what area?
Yeah.
Well, the lake is a unique market because it is, predominantly second home. And so, my business is coming from, you know, it, there's no really set geographic area because people come from, all over Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Kansas, Illinois, all these different states that surround Missouri. And so that's really, that's the trick. That's the hard part, because your audience isn't necessarily there. So a lot of the times when I'm doing a mailer to homeowners at the Lake of the Ozarks, it's actually going to their primary residence.
Home city. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's that, I don't know if that answers your question. There isn't a specific area at the lake. It's fairly big, but not, again, it's I don't know what the percentage is, but it's majority second home more than anything else.
Okay, perfect. So second home, um, and then let's even like knock out what's there might be a small segment of the audience. What is the general population of Lake of the Ozark?
Oh gosh. If you just base it on the signs, I don't know how accurate those are or Wikipedia or something online. You're probably talking 20 to 30,000.
Perfect. So I've done this. I've done a second home market with 11,000 people. Just for anyone to like, oh, do I have to be in a big city?
Yeah.
Um, it's actually better to be more targeted because those people are the one doing the research, especially people in second home areas. They know absolutely nothing about like where do I want to live? What's it like living there? Like what do I need to know? So for some people, if they just want to take a general like tool and do something simple, you can get vidIQ or you can start with like alsoask.com or answer the public and you can type in Lake of the Ozarks and you can get some basic keywords. Now you're just getting keywords to get like data and information of like what are people kind of looking at. You don't actually need to like if you look at most people's YouTube videos, it's not like the whole title or like most of the title is like a certain keyword. It's just giving you some like back information for you to like store in your head about like what is that consumer thinking? What are they kind of searching for? So in Lake of the Ozark, I like to start macro and then go micro, but be targeted. And what I mean by that is Lake of the Ozark, go there. If you're like in a big city like Orlando, it's or like Tampa or Miami, it's not best to compete on like that big of a pond first. Then
Mhm.
you can kind of start more like micro and go macro.
So when you say that, you mean choose more of a niche area of those big cities versus the city itself.
Yeah, and you can kind of go with a general area too. But that is your keyword. Your keyword is like an area because you want people to like remember you and think of an area. That is the like that is branding. Branding is just being associated with something. So if you want to be associated with something, associate yourself very simply with a certain area that you want to sell in and then kind of ladder up from there. So, like the Ozarks, you could say, like, kind of describe to me the area. If I'm going to move there, like, where am I looking? Like, there's probably competing areas, there's probably competing decisions in someone's head. Like,
Mhm.
what are they thinking about?
Yeah. So when you talk about the areas, there's probably what I would consider five distinct towns. There's a lot of small ones, but the five distinct ones with commercialism and whatnot. Two of them would be considered where all of the big stuff is. It's where the Menards and the big Home Depot and Dick's and that kind of thing is. That's basically in two of the areas. So there's a lot more activity. There's a movie theater there, that kind of thing. And then um, also that's up by the dam. So it's more activity going on, more activity on the water. It's just more active, busier, etc. You go further towards Camdenton, and it's still equally busy. However, smaller boats, not quite as wild, a little bit more of a small town feel, not as much big stuff. And then if you go to the other side of the lake, so the two busy towns are they consider that the St. Louis side. The other side is Sunrise Beach and Laurie, and that's the Kansas City side. And it's a little bit quieter, not quite as much activity, but it's on equally, it's on just the other side of the lake. So you still get some of those areas have a lot of activity. Some are farther up the lake. It's a huge lake. It's 90 plus miles in the main channel. Um, but yeah, so yeah, very distinct differences on where you want to live based on what you want around you, I think.
Yeah. So what you just did is almost like a video in itself. Like most
Good
people
point.
like think of Tampa, for example. I live in Tampa, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna live in Tampa Bay." And then they come here and they're like, I want to live by the beaches and Clearwater Beach, and those are where the good schools are." That's Pinellas County. That's a whole different area. But like most people do not search Pinellas County. Most people do not even know about those cities until they come here. So your first job is to think about like, okay, I want to be the expert in an area. That is, if you look at any real estate business, that's how most become very good at a certain market. And this doesn't mean you have to get very narrow, but like farming, mailers, open houses, people still did that in like specific areas. So when you think of Lake of the Ozarks, or really any area, it's like, what about, tell me about the top places to live at Lake of the Ozarks. What is like, how do I even rank the different areas? That's a whole video in itself. The neighborhoods ranked, or you can have a whole video that's literally just about Lake of the Ozarks areas explained or neighborhoods explained. And you're just explaining the different areas. And like another video that you kind of did was like whatever those two top competing towns are, that is what's called a versus or comparison angle. Like when you're searching for anything on Google and you have sales intent, you're searching comparison. So when you're searching for a CRM, you're going Follow Up Boss versus Chime or like insert whatever CRM.
Mhm.
So you can literally insert city versus city and explain the pros and cons of each one And that's a whole video in itself in explaining
So
which is
so then
better.
so then what you're saying is based on the fact that I labeled it as 5, I could do Lake Ozark versus Osage, Lake Ozark versus Camdenton, Lake Ozark versus Sunrise, Lake Ozark versus Lori, and then Osage versus Lake Ozark, Osage versus Camdenton. And in other words, I'd have, it's like if you're a bettor, if you're a gambler, there's a certain way that you can parlay things and you could do them all as like a round robin, they call it, which is terrible. I just called myself a degenerate of it, basically. But could you do it that way? And so now you got like 25 videos off of that one concept.
Yeah, and the nice thing is you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. You can go to different YouTube video like channels. You can go to blogs like HubSpot. You can even go to Redfin, which ever since ChatGPT came out, they have been pumping out hundreds of blogs every single month. And you can see what are the angles for a lot of these blogs. You'll see like on Redfin, there's very distinct like affordable suburbs, pros and cons, things to do. These are like angles that if you tie in the city, Lake of the Ozarks, things to do, Lake of the Ozarks, pros and cons, Lake of the Ozarks, like best suburbs or affordable suburbs or whichever angle you want to play with, all you're doing is playing almost like Tetris. And it's like I'm taking the area and I'm just adding another word and I'm just changing out that word across like 5, 10, 50 like different angles, and you're just pumping out all of this different content so that when someone searches Lake of the Ozarks and you're like, wait a second, this guy has 50 videos talking about this. I'm going to watch these videos. The magic number in marketing is about, it's kind of the rule of 7, and where it's like, if someone consumes like 7 hours, and for some people they've found kind of like 40 minutes is the time, they've consumed enough content to build trust with you. So you're trying to take a certain terms in real estate, it's neighborhoods, it's areas, it's cities, and you're just trying to own it for and just create so much content that it's almost impossible for someone to find someone else when they search that word, whatever that main keyword is. And again, in real estate, for most of it's an area base. For others, it's like kind of similar but different. Um, and it's just, yeah, that's really all it is. It's just
And
methodical,
when you say own it, like from an SEO standpoint.
basically. But you don't want to be like so down the rabbit hole of SEO where you think SEO is the only thing people care about, because most people aren't searching like what's it like living in uh Lake of the Ozarks, but they're wondering that. Like they're thinking about that. So it's like, what are the things that like they care about? Like where do I live? That question you can answer 101 ways. Like where to live in Lake of the Ozarks. It's just kind of reverse engineering the thought process and then making a ton of content to help answer those questions in their mind, essentially.
Is it really so? I mean, based on what you just described, like it's almost infinite.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a relatively rural area here, and with not a big population. And what you just described to me made me want to like just vigorously write down notes, because it's like literally I could do content forever. So, all right. And actually, I'm gonna preface this right now and just ask you: are you willing to come back and do a second episode on this? Because we're not going to get all this into one episode.
Yeah, that's fine. More
All
than
right, cool.
100%.
All right, good. So I want to wrap this up by talking about all right, that is a entry point and a safe entry point in any city.
Yep.
And I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. I got a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up, because here's what I want to tease for the next episode, which is the execution piece. We're not going to have time to talk about execution here. We're talking high level ideas. So I think the next question is, how do I execute? What kind of equipment do I need? What kind of editing does it require? Do I need to be in those locations? That's what we'll cover on the next episode and then some. But as we continue down this conversation, and now I've got 10 trillion ideas, when, so actually I'm going to use myself as the example. And I'm going to do two different examples here. Somebody who's never done anything and somebody like me who's already got a pretty strong foundation in the community. All right. I've got a strong foundation of digital mayor. And that's just continuing to grow. So the next challenge I have in my own future is conversion, right, on that digital mayor strategy. But I've already got a fairly healthy YouTube channel, almost a year old, organic, 1,000 subs, just been consistent, et cetera. Now that I've done that, do I set up some sort of a cadence on, because I don't think I want to vacate that. And I guess that's part of my question. Do I want to vacate that? Because now I've been lifted up as the guy who's helping prop up local businesses. I'm highlighting things to do off the water. I'm highlighting, just community things, right? Do I want to vacate that and just go all in on the moving, the best, the real estate driven stuff? Or do I want to maybe every other video or 1 out of 4 or whatever the case? What would be your answer to that question?
Yeah, and real quick before I answer that, there was like a thought. So like for most people, like you, like if, as an example, second home areas, like you can start to mash up together too. Like what is kind of this real estate psychographic, like second home? Like what are these terms that people search, like vacation rentals, waterfront properties, golf, and then you can add that. So like where to buy your second home in Lake of the Ozarks, where are the best places for second homes? So you can combine that strategy too, where it's like now you're starting to add another layer of real estate into it. That was just a side thought, but to dive into your question, it's more along the lines of if you want to keep up that same channel and you think it could kind of be two different audiences, but you still want to do both, then I would say you can start a second channel. You can test out you can always test out new content on the same channel, like and see how does this perform. The beginning of that test is always not going to look so pretty, and a lot of times, like the numbers are not going to look so good because your audience is used to this sort of content. But if it's a pretty similar audience, then you can do both on the same channel.
So let me ask you. So knowing that my audience, I create content with the thought that I really don't care if anybody else follows me other than people that are interested in the Lake of the Ozarks. So that
Yep.
I already go in with that intent. Like, you either want a vacation there, you already have a place there, or you want to go visit there, you want to go check it out, you might move there, right? And I build content with that in mind. Now, I know I have followers that are not Lake of the Ozarks. That's just by accident. But so I already have that in mind. So with that said, would you just blend them, or would you go build another channel, which is, and what would you call it? So would I blend them, or would I go create a new one?
So I guess first question to you is, do you see those two, let's just call them those content paths, do you see there being, for the most part, like 51% overlap or less than 51%? Like if you just had to guess,
What overlap? What do you mean?
like audience between the people that would want to watch both style of content.
Because I already do blend in some real estate stuff right now, and oftentimes I've had some really high performing, especially on TikTok. I've had some real estate videos get tens of thousands. I've had some that have gotten hundreds of thousands of views. I'd say they're ripe for consuming real estate content.
So in that case, I would say you can blend it and you can try the new content. There's some people that would argue that like you want to have a certain channel for a certain thing, but I think channel, audience. And like when you think of the audience or the brand of the channel, like it's kind of like the Jeff brand. The Jeff brand has more than one thing. Like you're not just into real estate, you're not just into like stuff outdoors and water. You have different personalities, but as long as there's enough overlap where the audience kind of fits, then I would just keep it in the same channel, not overcomplicate it. Now, if you have more money than God or more time or more leverage and you have the ability and the capacity and there's just that potential, then you could separate it. But like as long as the brand of the channel keeps its same essence, essentially. It's kind of a tough question, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that might be thinking it. I'm sure I'm a bit of an anomaly in this case, and I do want to wrap up with a question to the person who's not in my shoes. But as we continue to talk about this, I for me to create another channel wouldn't be that difficult. Um, yeah, I'd be doubling my content, but I already have a team. So yeah, I mean, I might have to add another editor, but to me, this type of content, whereas my current channel typically requires me to be at the lake. It requires me to go there and interview people and be on site. That's more time consuming. Whereas this content, I can shoot it with the proper backdrop. In my opinion, I'd probably have something Lake of the Ozarks related, which I actually have a nook in my office for that.
yep,
And then it's just all about B-roll and it's about the content. And I could probably film those videos. I mean, I could film 5 videos in 2 hours, right?
yep.
And then it's just a matter of the editing and the keywords and the captions, the thumbnails, and all that kind of stuff, which I have the capacity for that. So with that said, also knowing that my existing channel is very short heavy, I do a short a day, one long a week. I feel like if I went down the real estate rabbit hole channel, I would only do longs.
Yeah, then you can separate it because like an example is Ryan Serhant. If you Google search Ryan or YouTube search Ryan Serhant or just Serhant, you'll see he has 7 different channels and they all serve a different purpose. Like the more Serhant is for agents, Ryan Serhant is his luxury tours. Serhant is the brokerage tours listed by Serhant is kind of like their film tours. And he has his podcast, Business with Influence. Like, so he has.
Why not do playlists and blend some of that stuff? Because he's got more money than God? Is that the answer?
um, it's a mix of like it is very varied content. Like people who are going to like Ryan Serhant's like luxury home tour like channel, they expect Ryan and they expect high-end homes. They don't want to see some random brokerage video with no agent in there. The same reason they don't want to like a viewer of $100 million listing doesn't care about the 10 best ways to build your real estate business. So it's kind of a different audience and different content
Hmm.
mix at that point.
Okay. Interesting. This is valuable. All right. So now last question before we wrap up on this first episode is I am it's not me. Well, it's me, but pretend me. And I still like the Ozarks. I don't have a channel and I don't have a media team. I don't own any equipment. How in the hell am I going to pull this off? And I want you to answer that knowing that we're going to complete the answer on the next episode. So tease it.
I would say that there's equipment that you have and there's equipment that you can get. And then there's things that are probably not worth the investment at the beginning. And it's more about what you have available than what you don't have available. And kind of starting from a base and going from there. But there are kind of nuances between what's worth it versus not at the beginning. And we can kind of start from there. But there's definitely a lot of things that I shouldn't say. There's a few things that as long as you do those few things, it will end up being a very low cost and a very high return as a result.
Boy, did that leave them hanging off a cliff. And you're going to have to wait and check out the second episode. If you are listening to this and in close proximity to real time of its release, you're going to have to wait about a week. If not, you can jump onto wherever it is that you're listening to this and find the next episode to get the goods that is coming. Andrew, this is fun. I look forward to continuing. See you on the
Look
next
forward to it as
episode.
well. See you on the next one.
Lab Coat Agents Podcast.